I want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to my sponsor, P2 Collectibles, located at 204 East McGalley Road in Muncie and on eBay as well. So next time you're here in Muncie, let us know. Come give us a visit. Hey, what is up, y'all? Let's have some plus 3 TCG. Today we're going to be talking about some decks that can play Pot of Extravagance well. This card's pretty awesome. It's one of the new pot cards. It lets you draw 2 cards at the cost of being forced to activate it at the beginning of the main phase 1 and then not being able to draw cards for the rest of the turn, which is kind of bad. Can't play any other draw cards. However, the decks that you can use this in are going to benefit from it quite a lot. Currently, there's not a lot of meta decks that utilize this card, mainly a few rogue decks like Altergeist, which is weird to call that strategy rogue now. There's Guru Control. There's decks like Necroz. I know Trickstar can use this fairly effectively. But for those who invested in the card and are not sure what to play outside of those aforementioned decks, I feel like there's a few rogue and casual strategies that can utilize Pot of Extravagance fairly effectively, and I'd like to go over some of those decks so that either you can play them, maybe if you already own them, you can try this card out. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and let me know if I have missed any of them. So without further ado, let's hop right into the first one. I think Magical Musketeers can use this card fairly effectively. Even when we get the link, because we'll be playing 3 of the link regardless and can afford getting 1 to 2 banished. Ideally not 2, but it's going to get us there because we're only playing 3 cards that we really want to summon. So 3 out of 15. You're banishing 6 variants. You shouldn't be banishing 2 very often, or 3 almost never. 1, I can imagine that, but Extravagance is amazing in the deck. It's a +1 that gets you to your extenders that we need to play the game. So if we get the link, when we get the link, this is going to help out a lot. But currently, right now, it is just an extender that allows us to get into the cards that let us play the game. It semi-conflicts with the idea of activating your extenders under the Musketeers turn 1, but I feel like that's alright. Usually you would summon your Musketeer and then ideally activate your draw card under it so you could trigger its effect. However, the draw cards previously used all had the drawbacks with the deck as well, like Duality, conflicted with Ties of the Brethren. A lot of these revolve around either drawing into Ties of the Brethren or interacting with the Muskets and Ties of the Brethren. Duality, conflicted with Brethren. Desires run a chance of banishing all copies of one of your level 3s, which essentially shuts down Ties because we don't want to run any of the bad ones. And Upstart, it's still viable, but it conflicts with Extravagance, so I'm not really sure we want to be playing it because it's a 1-of, and Extravagance, you can play it at 3. 2, I think, is good enough. 3 is going to guarantee that you see it, but you're also going to see multiple copies of it more often, so I don't know if that is quite as worth it, but I do think Extravagance is worth playing in Magical Musketeers, even if you aren't being, or even if you're not triggering the Musketeers off by activating it under one of them. You're still getting into them. You're still drawing into an additional card, which I think is going to help you get into your cards more effectively. Now, this next one is probably my favorite one to put it in, is Madolche. Surprisingly enough, this card is amazing in Madolche. Now that we have Petting Sessur, a contender for arguably one of the best main deck cards of the archetype, being able to special summon itself and then special summon 1 from deck, it's pretty awesome. But our choices of monsters to summon are limited after you activate Petting Sessur. It's limited to Madolches after you use her effect, so this becomes less of a problem with a card like Extravagance, I guess is what I'm trying to get into. Because you can essentially just play 2 or 3 of all the Madolche extra deck cards and not worry about banishing a copy or 2 of Chocolate a la Mode or Sistart, since you can just recycle these cards anyway. And you're going to be playing ideally 3 of all of those, so you should be fine. 3 Tiramisu. You can play 3 Chocolate a la Mode, but I would say just for the fact that you don't want to banish all of your copies of Chocolate a la Mode and playing 2 of them, you have a higher chance of banishing all of them. So that's something to consider, even though Chocolate a la Mode is spicy right now. It's like $25. But since you can recycle all those cards, I think playing Extravagance in Madolches is more than worth it. It's kind of a pricey deck right now, but I would argue that with the release of Extravagance, that's why a lot of the cards went up, as well as us getting the new rank 4 in the next pack. Moving on though, here's the final deck that I'm going to talk about that I think can really benefit from Extravagance, and that's any Inspector Border or Stun deck, Inspect Border Stun decks. Just stun decks in general that don't utilize the extra deck a lot, they just utilize it kind of as a toolbox in the strategy. Extravagance gives this deck gives it additional traction because it's a draw card that has little to no disadvantages because the extra deck is fairly superfluous, like we were saying. And the only draw cards you might be playing are Desires, Demise, or Duality. And Duality you can still play with Extravagance since it doesn't draw the cards, you just mill them and then add a card. So, like I was saying, the extra deck it's a toolbox, so you don't need it, and Extravagance is really going to help you out getting into the cards that you need. The main deck is the workhorse that stuns the opponent, so relying on the traps and floodgates to stop them from playing the game is obviously the strategy, but you need to draw those cards in order to get there, and Extravagance plays that role well. I think that it is definitely worth maining. You can play other ones, like I think all of them have like synergy together. Like Demise is really, really good because you're playing so many traps, you're going to set them anyways so that you can activate that, but then you can't special summon cards, or you can't deal damage. Sometimes you need to deal damage on like those going second plays. That one's coming up less often, so you could arguably play Extravagance and Demise together as well as Duality, but I think maybe maxing out Extravagance and maxing out Duality might be enough because you're going to arguably see one of those in hand, and those are going to dig in for either more traps or more extenders like Extravagance into Duality. So I just think these are all things to consider, and these are some decks that you should maybe keep in mind when you're investing into such a staple like this, because I think there are people out there who invested in this card and they might have invested into it as a meta card and they planned on playing it in Altergeist, but Altergeist kind of fell off, and because of the representation not being there, it's not doing as well. People have moved on from the deck for the most part because it's just not doing what it used to. Kind of got power crept, even with Extravagance. So with that in mind, if you invested in this card and you planned on just playing in those, there's other options out there too that I think are just as fun, but they're just more rogue and casual strategies, and that might seem a little bit counterintuitive because the card is so expensive, so you want to play in decks that you're going to get a return on investment with, and rogue and casual strategies aren't giving you as much of a return on your investment. But if you are looking to have a little fun and you're trying to maximize the deck's potential, Extravagance in the decks that I mentioned is definitely going to help you out. Let me know if you think there are any other decks, because I know there are lots. There are plenty that I did not mention. I just want to see what y'all think about some of the other decks you can play Extravagance in down in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. Like I said, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down. This is Alex from +3 TCG signing out.